I wanted to show you all this place called Shiprock, New Mexico, an ancient Navajo site that is just amazing. There is clearly something here. One of those ridiculous spots, one of the many, probably thousands of spots around the Western Americas, Central Western Americas, that just has landmarks and things that don't make any sense and that are clearly absolutely nothing like they are telling us. And if you look up this place anywhere, you will see the exact same thing. Oh, 35 million years ago, or 50 million years ago, millions of years ago, this was a volcano that erupted and left this remnant in its wake, and you're just seeing the shell, the inner tube of the volcano. This took place millions of years. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But yet there's this amazing structure you'll see, and there are these walls running from it that are almost clear walls. They're built, they look, in some of the close-ups I've seen, in some of the drone footage on other videos, they look like bricks put together. And look at that. Look at that formation they're trying to convince was, oh, it ran against water. The lava flow hit a wall of water and it created whatever they say. Absolute nonsense. The Navajo have a totally different story, however. And I'll show you some of the clips and read one of the kind of little things, but a lot of them say the same. I haven't been able to find an amazing reference or a story from a true Navajo that was passed down or anything like that. But the gist of it is that they took a giant bird, maybe a griffin of sorts, which I will read about in a book called Medieval Geography later in this, because I'm connecting a couple things here, and it's quite a stretch, but it's just interesting in the form of the connection you'll see by the end of this. But either way, look at this thing. Absolutely ridiculous. If there is a candidate for either a giant tree at one point or a massive building that's been melted, torched, bombed, something, poured acid on it, for crying out loud. Who knows? With airships, what you could dump on something or what you could obliterate something with the power of technology that we have no idea about and that we do know about. You could do a lot of different things, and I bet this was something that we have no idea about. But either way, it's been a sight for a long time, ever since people found it. They say it looks like a ship coming out of the rock, but I don't know. I think it looks like a massive building with 2 towers, several other little parts, all kinds of things. But the Navajo, here it is, 30 million years ago, standing powerfully and dominating in the New Mexico desert that spreads out around it, 15 miles south of the town of Shiprock, making it the dominating feature of the land in all directions. Anytime they use the word million, you know they are talking right out of their behinds. It is absolutely pathetic to believe anything that anyone says when they use a number like millions of years ago. There is no chance anyone knows, and I've said it millions of times, they don't even know what happened yesterday and can't report yesterday or 5 minutes ago's news accurately, let alone millions of years, thousands of years, any of that. All nonsense. So the Navajo said they lived on a rock, and I heard at one point they had a bird, or a series of birds, that took them to the top of the rock where they lived for a while, planting things on the top. Apparently it was very livable, very habitable, the whole thing. They went down to get the water, to grow their crops, to do all kinds of different things, and then they would come back up and they would live on it. There's talk of a giant bird, and I mentioned this in an autodidactic talk recently about how a Native American or someone that's very primitive would think nothing about a ship being any type of ship or rocket or plane or anything. This is the creation myth that I want to dive deeper into later on, but if anyone knows about it, definitely link me up with something nice in the comments. But either way, a native primitive culture, seeing anything, any type of flying object, it could be a plane, an airship, anything, would be considered a bird. And if someone, if there could be a multitude of different things, helicopter-like structures. This I found very cool. Look at the slaying of Yitzoho, the big giant down there in the creation myth. So there seems to be a lot there. But the Navajo, we're going to have to dive back into the Indian thing, the Indian history, and try to reconcile some things. Because here on one side you have the cult of science saying one thing about the geology and all this nonsense for millions of years ago, and the rocks prove it. But On the other hand, you have the Navajo saying a lot of things that are kind of blended with mythology a lot. So is there a harmony? They talk about things living on there. I think it was an inhabited place. I think it was a massive building or something at one point. And then they say that a giant lightning storm struck it at one point and caused all that damage. So they say it wasn't a volcano. They say it was a massive lightning storm. Science says a volcano 30 million years ago. Who is telling the truth? I have no idea, but all around it, there are all kinds of different interesting things, interesting patterns. If you check the Google Earth, you can see structures, potential Starford-ish things, electrical fractile beams going out there, the grains, the grooves. Look at this. This almost looks like there's a whole thing planted on top, and that these are some of the openings that are there underneath. Barber Peak, that looks like a sphinx or some kind of other thing, but those holes, it looks like you could dig all over there, mine all over there, and find tons of stuff. Rock Cathedral, very interesting name, how they consider a lot of these things cathedrals. You know, was there even a solution, a liquid solution that you could pour on these things that would make it turn to this kind of whatever? I was also wondering if they were using mushrooms to build at one point. If you could, there are some pretty strong mushrooms and really big mushrooms, and I wonder if an ancient technology or ancient culture could ever do that. Just a random thought, but you never know. I mean, again, this looks like the rock in the middle of Australia a little bit. These things look just, they're all over the place. And you see them in certain countries in the Middle East, and there are buildings and places within them that are still preserved. But these spots all over America, we're told there's never anything, don't even think about it, but yet there's all these lines, different patterns, different things buried all over the place. John Levy and many other people out there are great at pointing out the anomalies that you can find just by Googling Earth and taking a look. And look at this. That could be part of a giant thing. It could also be some kind of modern road, some kind of technical thing. I have no idea. I don't know exactly. Again, just theorizing about all of this. We can't know the truth. I don't claim to know the truth. I just love to think about the possibilities because I know we need that. But look at that. That could be huge. This could have been an absolute massive walled city with that Shiprock at the center. At the apex, a giant Tower of Babel-esque thing with people living on it, people all over the place, tech, metals. This place looks like a thing that has been just looted, left to rot, left as a stubble of what it once was, whether attacked or eviscerated or robbed and pillaged and what knows. But the chances of their stories being accurate are totally false. But when you think about the lightning, again, you know, in the case of the bird and primitives not really knowing, or just people that aren't around technology from the past, not knowing what certain things are, so confusing a bird with a plane or etc., any type of flying device. They could also be considering lightning with something. Lightning could be a weapon that some civilization advanced way beyond them uses in the form of lightning. It controls it. The volcanoes are, that's got to be baloney. Look at this thing. Jeez. And the wall. Definitely take a look at the wall coming up because it is perfect. It is amazing. It is thin. It is clearly a wall. Like, someone should definitely get permission from the Navajo if possible. The Navajo could make a ton of money by even just sponsoring different things or making a discovery on your Navajo land. Do something that the government won't let any of us do. Dig on your land. Discover something amazing buried under here. Find artifacts. Turn this place into just a masterpiece of archaeological insight that would rewrite history immediately, and collect on it, Navajo. Don't let the government take any, but let the people hear it. That's what needs to happen. There needs to be a whistleblower in this series of discoveries and researches that just makes something happen, brings us all to the next level of thought and the next level of just pondering, something else that just connects all of our thoughts together and with a way that just makes total sense. I feel like something's coming. And here is a picture of the actual lightning strike thousands and thousands of years ago. Just kidding. But next, I'm going to go into this medieval geography book. And this, again, it could be totally unrelated, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And it's about the Hereford Mappa Mundi, I believe. Yep. Which is really awesome if you've never seen it. This book, I'll put the link down below. But there's talks about Griffons, and there's talks about the Northern Islands, and just weird different races of beings. And it's one of those books that just makes you be like, wow, we have no clue what's going on here, and it's cool to try and figure it out. So I'm going to read a few pages here. They're a little mixed up and they're not like the best, but it's pretty cool. So at the top of page 60, actually 61, it says, and this is all a description of that map, talking about it, using the text on the map to discover some stuff and tell some things about everything. So on page 61, I'm just going to read 3 pages because I found this stuff interesting, and you'll get a glimpse of what the book's like, and you'll get the little thoughts of the Griffons, and if those were the birds that took these people, and if they had interacted with them all the time. You never know. All the while, kind of, there's primitives, kind of natives lurking around, but there's a whole nother society and world going around with a history that we have known nothing about and could be way beyond the poles, thriving. Who knows? Again, Medieval Geography, page 61. Above the Silas is a picture of 2 men engaged in the operation which inverts the banquet of Thyestes and consists in cutting up and devouring the bodies of their deceased parents. The inscription says that they represent the Essidones, whose custom it was to devour the corpses of their defunct relations. This account of the habit of the Essidones is given by Herodotus and is followed by Mela and Solinus, from whom our author has borrowed it. But these writers add that they set the skulls in gold and used them as drinking cups, as was said of the Scythians above. Instead of this, our cartographer appends a statement, apparently of his own invention, to the effect that the Essidones thought their mode of disposing of their friends preferable to allowing them to be devoured by worms, a sense of the word tinea, which is found in Claudian. Immediately above the Essidones in their banquet is a picture of 3 men, Arimaspi, engaged in combat with a griffin for emeralds, as we learned from the inscription. A second inscription describes the Griffons. The description of the Griffons or Griffons seems to come chiefly from Isidore, and it answers in great measure to the accounts, more or less credible in themselves, of the great bird called Rokh, R-O-K-H, or Ruk, R-U-K-H, which was said to be able to take up an elephant in its talons. So the bestiaries, physiologist says, it lives in India and can carry off an ox on its talons for its young ones. It may be said further that the people of northern Siberia believe in the existence of birds of enormous size, regarding as they do some of the fossil bones or horns of animals, which are so often found there as claws or bones of birds. The story of the one-eyed race, the Arimaspians, who fight with the Griffons that guard the gold of the northern regions, is as old as Herodotus, who, however, expressed strong doubt as to their having one eye only, seeing, as he says, that people in general have 2 eyes. The reader will notice that one at least of the men in the picture has 1 eye, a piercer, no doubt, in the center of his forehead. But since the time of Herodotus, the prize for which the Arimaspians contended underwent a change. In Pliny it had become precious metals in general, and in Solinus precious stones, among which emeralds were thought to hold the 3rd place in value. Our author therefore judiciously adopts the latest conclusion and decides upon emeralds. Above the Arimaspians are the Robasci Scythi, the Robaski, a tribe mentioned by Ptolemy as living east of the source of the Volga, and by Orosius as having the altars of Alexander within their boundaries. Then the Soromate Scyth, and in a triangular compartment above them the Albani, who are said to have gray eyes and to see better in the night than in the day. Their peculiar eyesight is described by Isidore, and their unclean and indecent habits by Ethicus. They inhabited the country now called Georgia. On the other side of the mountains, which enclose the Albani, is a stream called Fluvius Acheron, running into the Caspian Sea, and an inscription. This is taken in substance and partly in words from Ethicus, who describes at length the mysterious and awful river and abyss, which he says is the beginning of Gehenna, and resembles the Dead Sea in its qualities. It is situate in the dim region beyond the Caspian Sea in the Umarosi Montes, which are still farther distant. This alarming description seems to be founded on the modest remark of Pliny that not far from the river Sangarius in Bithynia, on the opposite side of the Euxine, is a harbor called Acon, famous for the plant aconite, where there is an Acherusian cave, a cave emitting noxious vapor. Mela, however, says more than Pliny. that there is a passage to the infernal regions there, and that Cerberus was brought out from this cave by Hercules. Solinus seems to repeat a part of the statement of Mila that there is a passage to the infernal regions. Asia Minor, and especially Bithynia, was and is a well-known seat of volcanic disturbance, and perhaps this so-called cave of Acheron has been mixed up in hopeless confusion with the volcanic region of Central and Western Asia. Sir John Maudeville seems to fix the site near the Caspian Gates, and so not far from the not-extinct volcano Dimavend, for he says men call the city Cumania, built at that place by Alexander, the Gate of Hell. Wow, very interesting. And then it goes on to say, beyond the river Acheron is a figure of a monster. I'm going to stop that reading there, but that next part is on page 64. Definitely check the link. But I've been thinking about monsters and that term lately because it comes up when you're raising a child and you see all these kids' movies and monsters are everywhere. But monsters, mountains, terrible, I wonder if there's a connection there, if there was some kind of mountain creature that terrorized and that they wanted, again, they love to put things out there into the psyche that were once good but twist them into something bad. And monsters are bad in our society, so they were probably good in the reality of the world. Who knows though? But take a look at this section too. I found on page 161. It says, adjacent to the Cynocephalus, we observe a man leading a horse, over the back of which is thrown the skin of a man to serve as a saddle. The custom thus illustrated of converting the skins of slaughtered enemies into trappings for horses was attributed by Solinus to the Geloni, but by an oversight which we cannot account for, our cartographer has transferred the credit of this barbarous custom to the Griffi, or Griffons. The first clause of this legend accords with the one in the Imago Mundi map. Hic habitant Griffe hominis necam. The Anglo-Saxon map places the Grifforum gens in the same locality. That's probably the home of the Griffons, or the original. The belief in the existence of these human Griffi is founded on the authority of Ethicus, who places them in the extreme north in the position of the Ural Mountains. Their country is described as abounding in wild animals and minerals, but deficient in agricultural products, and the people as skilled in the working of metals. These statements serve to connect the medieval Griffi with the myth of the gold-guarding Griffons of Herodotus. Very awesome. There's so much cool stuff. There's even a page in here which connects Prester John as king of the Tartarians, I believe it says on that map, which is interesting because I always hear the name Prester John, but I haven't dived exactly deep enough into it yet. But I definitely will, and we all definitely will, and I'm sure one of you has out there. So definitely share your insight. But what is this place, and how many are there existing? If there is a candidate, again, for an ancient building to have had some type of catastrophe happen to it intentionally, and have it be, have this be something amazing at some point. This isn't just a volcano. This wasn't just a mountain. This doesn't look like anything in Hawaii or anywhere else that you've ever seen. This is clearly something different, and they're hiding it with just a pathetic story. In the Navajo, I want to hear that story. I want to hear it deeply from someone who knows and lived in that area, and it's been truly passed on about what that story is, because everything online just says a few sentences or a paragraph, etc. So if anyone out there is Navajo, let us know. But look at that wall. How can you not? What? How could that ever be created anyway? And the way it runs out 3 separate ways, like veins coming out from it, are just separate. You can tell this was some massive city. This was a central location, like so many, on the outskirts of the mountains in this area. And if you look, take a look at it on Google Earth, you'll see the whole area around it is just looks like something unique happened right with this place at the center. It was the target of something. It was the bullseye for some disaster that should have never happened, in that it just obliterated its true power and its true history. In so many of these places, these things can be found all over the world, these shapes, these remnants of majesty, magicalness, and we need to keep digging to find out what happens. And I hope, I want to see some archaeological discoveries. We need all these fundings are going to the colleges, these nonsense that continue to put out garbage so the Smithsonian can cover it up and take it and steal it like they've been doing for centuries. And again, just take a look at this article. I'll be posting another video on this later, but this just says it all. As if they didn't have enough money, they are definitely always caught looting from the poor countries. Imagine the stuff that they find, they loot, they don't tell anyone, or other people find, civilizations have, tribes have, they steal, they don't kick up a fuss because who's going to challenge them? Imagine how much this has happened. They have looted so much from the world, and they've stolen our true history by not giving it to us and not allowing us to see what they have and just documenting it all for the sake of everyone. That's what a society responsible for ancient information should be doing. They should be required and forced to do that. They should not be allowed to hide this for the sake of it. Historians, archaeologists, they should really be speaking up. But since they won't, we will have to. And someday the Smithsonian will have to answer for what they have done, and someone should leak immediately about what they know if they work for that. Who cares? The amount of praise you will get will be astounding. And wow, what happened at the top of this place, we will never know. But I'd love to hear your insight. Even look at the marks up there. So much that they don't tell us. Probably somewhere in there is an answer carved. Who knows? This, I remember, this is called Ancient Forest, one of my old artworks that I came up with before I drove across country after I had first heard the theory of these ancient trees. And I love it. It jived with what I thought of just something clicked about it. And the potential for that, I totally believe. Because this place, everything we see, all the trees around us seems so small. Everything seems like it had a layer of soil dumped on it and then it was just replanted. Like our world, the magic of the world, the beauty of all this architectural incredibleness from the past, this mastery, it appears to have all been wiped out and dumped on except for a few remaining places around the world that have these buildings, and gladly we've been able to see some. But what were these ones? Why did they take such care in destroying things like this and Devil's Tower and other ones all over the Midwest? The entire stretch of Rocky Mountains could be a metropolis, and most likely may have been in the ancient realm. Who knows? A lot to think about. Bless you all. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks again.